And do you do weights as part of your training program?
Yes, I do a lot of gym. Yeah.
Yep.
You can't tell, but no, I do. I do a lot of gym because especially over this period in the off season, just because. Yeah, I find that helps a lot. Actually, to be honest, that should be my answer. Is probably gym.
Cool. This podcast is brought to you by Trivelo Coaching, where we help triathletes and cyclists like you train smarter to race faster. I'm your host, Jordan Donnelly, and on my left is former Australian Ironman Champion and head coach of Trivelo Coaching, Gerard Donnelly. Luca Hamilton is a 27-year-old Australian cyclist who currently rides for UCI World Tour team and our Australian pro team, Jayco Alula. Since joining the World Tour team in 2018, he has already achieved some impressive results, competing in all three major Grand Tours and placing an impressive 13th in the 2022 Giro. He also finished 4th in Paris-Nice in 2021 and won a stage in Tirreno Adriatico in 2020, proving his talent, not only mixing it in with, but beating the best riders in the world. In this podcast episode, recorded just before the Tour Down Under and after the Australian Road Nationals race last month in January, we dive deep into the mental strategies and insights of a top athlete. Lucas shares his experience from competing at the highest level, including what it takes to bounce back from setbacks and maintain peak performance. And part of this interview is an exclusive post-race analysis of the Australian Road Nationals race, where Lucas had a very impressive showing, but despite a few obstacles that impacted his results on the day, we get to hear detailed insights about race tactics, about the mental challenges that athletes face mid-race and how they can cope with them. And we really get a behind-the-scenes picture of how Australia's best athletes were tactically competing against each other on the day. And every athlete dreams of winning the national title and wearing the Australian jersey for the year. This is why it was such an incredible opportunity to chat with Luca Hamilton just after the race. One thing we've really learned on this podcast is that every athlete is different and everyone has different things that work for them. But most importantly, there are multiple ways to perform your best as an athlete. And for example, Dad and I, we definitely go about training and racing a little differently. Of course, we do many of the things the same, but we hope that by providing interviews like this from professional athletes, you can find things that you like and that suit you and your personality and your nuances, and understand the things that you don't like doing and listen to some things that professional athletes might do that don't suit you. And so a big thanks to Lucas for doing this interview right before the Tour Down Under. I was able to fire some questions at him about his personal training and racing preferences, his nutrition, and more. So be sure to look out for his continued improvement and his performances on the World Tour stage this year. I had a great time interviewing him. Dad wasn't on this interview, but with huge ambitions for Team Jayco. We were really excited to have this, and we can't wait to see what the future holds. Lucas, a very big welcome to the episode. Thanks for jumping on. Our first question we normally like to ask everyone is, what training session did you do today? You're a couple of days out from the Tour Down Under, so I am keen to see what you actually might have done today if it wasn't a rest day.
Thanks for having me. Today was just we actually had a sponsor ride with a local Giant store here in Adelaide. So it was actually a nice little ride. We just cruised an hour and a half down the beach and had a few coffees.
Unreal.
So, no complaints.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. And then what did you do over the weekend, kind of in the lead up? Are you having an easy few days, especially you had the Nationals last week and it's leading into a stage tour? What do you do over the weekend leading in?
It's a bit of an odd one. It changes each time, but like Nationals is on Sunday. You normally have a pretty easy week after. We've spent most of our time reconning the stages. Like, most of the roads pretty well by now. But yeah, a few changes here and there. So we had a look at the Pick the Harbour stage and had a look at the Corkscrew stage, just to sort of some of the important days. And then obviously we raced on Saturday night, just around a city circuit here. So it was actually, to be honest, pretty solid few days. But put the feet up now until we start tomorrow.
Perfect. Now, I do want to touch on the Nationals and talk about that race and see how it panned out. And you obviously your specialty is a climber and more of a GC rider. And that was obvious when it was getting into the later stages of the race and you started what I would describe as floating up the hill. You closed down one of the breaks and we could not believe, we were actually on the hill watching, but we could not believe how quickly you closed it down. And that shows how good your climbing ability is. But tell me, how did that race pan out for you? What was your kind of summary and description of the race?
Yeah, as always, Nationals is a bit of it's an awesome race to watch, and it's nearly just as nerve-wracking as racing as it is to watch. It's there's a lot of moving parts, and you sort of got to try and keep up with it all. We've obviously got no radio, so you're relying on information off the roadside. And I think this year was, I think from a viewer's point of view, it was a good race to watch.
It was unreal.
And it sort of felt like that a little bit in the race. It always felt a little bit like unexpected what was going to happen. Sometimes groups stay away, sometimes groups don't. You sort of relying on how people's legs are out the road. Myself personally, I had probably one of the better days I've had on the bike. Like I felt really good, which sort of cost me a bit in the end because I ended up moving probably a little bit too early, 5-6 laps to go. I started to probably do a little bit too much, which in hindsight would have been maybe okay, but I obviously had that crash, which I probably did more damage to my ego than body parts, just uphill. But that sort of cost me a bit and it actually sort of, in a way, not to put it all down to me, not that my presence changed anything, but more the crash actually changed a few things in the bike race. It meant we lost Callum, who was actually on a really good day because he had to give his bike to me.
Yeah, which he was
he was he's a great teammate. So we lost him, and he was going really well and had put in some big moves before that. We'd obviously, Caleb was getting dagged at the time and sort of got back on because of it. The two groups split into two. It was quite a fast lap, and then it sort of changed the dynamic of the race. And then it meant that when I got back on, I'd done like 2 or 3 pretty big laps already, and sort of that lap chasing back on, I sort of was starting to get a little bit of trouble. Could start to feel it, which not to blame the crash at all, but it did change a fair few things. And then in the end, there, I think the strongest boys were up the front and racing, and it's always hard, especially someone. For Bling, it's hard in those situations because no one wants to sprint against you. And he's always going to get bombarded with attacks, and it's sort of the pressure's on him, or the, responsibility's on him to make sure no one slips away. So it was obviously disappointing for us because I think we had the team and the riders to pull off the win, but full credit to Plappy. He rode, for me, a really smart bike race, and he obviously had the legs, and he bluffed his way through it a bit in terms of, I'm sure he won't mind me saying that, but he sort of made it look like he was probably hurting more than he was. He put on a classy ride, in my opinion.
Heaps to unpack here. I'll start with Plappy. Do you guys talk to each other after, and do you find out how much he was bluffing? Was he really sitting at the back because he was bluffing, or was he just hurting a little bit and just trying to get through a majority of the race, then trying to come good in the end?
No, I haven't. I actually haven't spoken to him, but whether he was bluffing or not, I'm not sure whether that's confirmed or not. But I would have a feeling that he did. It's pretty unlikely that he was feeling shit house and then feeling bad and then coming back. But if he did, then maybe he was not bluffing, but I think he just did. And it's always tough for those guys in those World Tour teams that are against us. They're by themselves, and it's quite easy to get frustrated with the race because a lot of the time nationals feels out of your control. In my opinion, like I said, I think he just rode it so smart, and whether he was bluffing or whether he wasn't, he timed it to perfection, and he sort of was able to pull it off, which is in his position by himself, not to pump him up too much, but he's it's hard to do. So it was a good ride. In fact, all those boys did a pretty good ride. Like for me, one of the strongest on the day was probably Ben O'Connor. He did a lot of work, and he sort of just took it on his shoulders a bit.
Yeah, and he blitzed that second last lap, which was the fastest of the day, and that was just all him on the front, right?
Yeah. He did. He did some pretty impressive pulls, and he was so he was moving all right.
And with these races, there's no team radios for those that don't know, and so you're relying a lot on what you're seeing around you, and I guess talking to people. Are people talking about specific riders? Are you talking to your teammates about what's going on? Like, are people mentioning that Plapp's at the back, or is it just you kind of see it, but not everyone sees it? Same with Caleb as well.
Exactly. I think any of those any of those guys we're mindful of. I think obviously we're all back here in Australia training over the summer. We know what local guys from each state are sort of going well. Like obviously I'd done a bit of training with Jimmy Whelan and I knew that he was moving really well. And then you obviously have the World Tour guys who we're all very aware of and we know well, and whether you're not really sure how well they're going, but if they're there deep in the race, you know, Nationals is an easy circuit to get around. So if they're there deep in the race, you know that they've put in enough work to be pretty good. So we discussed a bit. I sort of said I had a feeling, and I sort of mentioned it, that I could see Plappy lining that he was going to definitely move at some point. He was sitting at the back. He's sort of like, he started to look pretty comfortable. So I'm pretty sure that he was going to do something, whether it was on the climb or not. And like you sort of talk about that sort of stuff. And when it's down to a group of that much, you know, you sort of got to pick a few guys that you're going to watch, and we can't watch everyone. And, you know, guys like that, you have to be mindful of. So you sort of communicate that. Yeah.
Yeah. And what actually happened in your crash? It wasn't very clear on TV. It was kind of slightly missed, but what? I
was out of the saddle and I was overlapping the wheel, which you sort of do anyway on climbs. And then Jimmy Whelan just sort of swung out, and then I touched it and then he sort of swung out again. It was no one's fault. It was literally just like one of those awkward crashes where I just had a little get down, and it was just silly. No one's real fault. Just happened. But the problem was that somehow, I don't know, but like I completely, I broke one of the spokes and went into my derailleur. So sort of like the bike was unrideable, exactly. which was unfortunate, because if it was rideable, it would have, you know, I would have been able to just jump back on, and but that was sort of what held it up. I sort of rode Callan's bike, nearly got back on, then did the bike swap, and then like didn't get on till, you know, through the finish there. So it was more the chase back on that and the bike braking that hurt me. Yeah,
definitely. And what's your mindset after that? You obviously try not to panic. You're on a different bike. You're trying to figure out when a bike swap could happen. What are you saying to yourself?
Yeah, to be honest, I think I was okay. Yeah, I stayed pretty calm. Mm-hmm. You got to just make sure in those moments, I think on a hot day that it was on Sunday, you got to keep drinking, keep eating, because it's easy to get caught up in the moment. We still, I think, had 3 laps to go or something. So for me, it was just about, you know, keep fueling and sort of get back on. I didn't really have much concern that I wouldn't get back on, because, you know, the style of racing at Nationals, it's very stop-start. I had a little bit of concern that I'd get back on and the race would be, you know, a few guys would have gone and it would have been like, you know, sort of come from behind a little bit. But but I was pretty calm. But when I got back on, I was hoping that, you know, we'd have a couple of easy laps on the climb. Like, if it had gone down the lap I got back, could have been a different story. But it was, in the end, it was okay. Like, I actually felt all right, but it definitely stung me a bit. Yeah.
And quick thinking, I think you grabbed 1 or 2 bottles and your head unit. Is that right?
Yep. Got my Garmin and that.
Yeah. That's solid. And that's obviously your first thought. Bike's done. Grab these. Make sure you got your water and your head unit, and then you can get on a new bike.
Yeah, bottles is normally first. Head unit probably didn't need to worry about too much, but sort of just natural reaction. But
at that stage of the race, I guess you're not really looking down.
Exactly. For Nationals, you don't really, like the circuit racing, you don't really need it. You know how many laps is left. Like, obviously, if it's point A to B, it's something you need. But in circuit racing, it's pretty self-explanatory.
And you're not looking down at your power, just curious to how you're going compared to how you're feeling. Is that not as important to you?
No, not really. Not too worried. If I was out there by myself, I would probably be looking down a lot more. But when you're in the bunch, not really. Like, I every now and then have a little look at like lap times and that, just to see, you know, like if you're like, oh, that was a pretty hard lap, look down, like, and you see it's actually, we've gone pretty fast. Because I've raced that circuit since I was, you know, under 23, so I know it very well. I know what's a hard lap and what's a slow and what's a fast lap. So, but apart from that, not much. You're looking at the lap signs. That's about it.
Yeah. Last couple of questions on the race. I don't want to dwell on the negative, but what's your analysis for yourself? You obviously were feeling really good. You looked really good. Like I said, you seemed like you were floating up the hills. Personally, how do you reassess that? You just take some confidence going, I was in form, and just, you know, that kind of stung me a bit.
To be honest, I think first thing is, like, it's obviously you work hard over the summer. and you sort of want to rock up and have good legs. And so that was the positive. Like I did have good legs. The form was in a good place. The negative is, I guess, I in my opinion, I rode a little bit silly. I rode a little bit too eager. And yeah, sort of easy got caught up in it a bit and sort of started to go a little bit early. And then, yeah, I think there was a couple of things on the last lap that I did. Like obviously I really wanted to be there in that group with Michael at the front there, that 4 or 5 guys. And I did a turn on the climb before Platt went to bring back that group of 3. And I pulled like on the flat bit, fast bit, and sort of the first like minute and a half of the second part of the climb. And that late in the race, it sort of, I sort of went probably I was trying to bring back that group of 3, but realistically they were always coming back. They were just sitting there and I brought them back, and then the attacks happened. In hindsight, I shouldn't have done that turn. I should have just, because it's one of those climbs where if you're in the wheels for that bit, you can really get good recovery, and then you're ready for the attacks to go over the top. Because once we got over the top, I was good again. But when they initially attacked, it was like I'd sort of done the end of my effort. And that was, to be honest, just one thing that like in hindsight's a wonderful thing. But if I could have my time again, I probably would have, because, obviously if there's myself and Michael there, it changes the whole dynamic of that. Or just 2 guys from the same team in that front group changed the whole dynamic. So yeah, I think that was a bit disappointing. But live and learn.
Either at the time, are you sort of thinking, I want to pull this back? Are you sort of sacrificing yourself a little bit for Michael? Is that what you're thinking, or you just, or any one of you guys there? Is that what's going through?
Yeah, I think at that point, 100% it's all in for Michael. And that was my thoughts. And I sort of was trying to get the group back that I was in. There was maybe, I can't remember how many there was of us, maybe 6, 7 of us in the second group. And I was pretty eager to get back, because even with a larger group, I'd still back him in to win in a gallop. And I knew that if I was there, I still had a good enough legs to make sure that, nothing went right up until, you don't know what could happen. Like maybe, I wouldn't have been able to, but, it would have been good to be able to, as long as a Caleb or someone wasn't there in that group with me, I was pretty happy to, get back on. And that's sort of the thing with nationals is there's no radios. So, he doesn't know that up the road that, the group behind potentially doesn't have Caleb or who it has, and, the numbers and whatnot, and that I'm there. He doesn't even know that I'm there really. So yeah, it was sort of, that was one thing that I think I was keen to get that group back, but it's sort of out of your control a little bit.
And lastly, what was the team assessment? Matthews, what was his assessment? He would have been disappointed to be right there and then not get it. How do you guys assess that as a team?
Yeah, I think, obviously disappointed because we didn't win. We're an Australian team. Like, we love being able, like every year that I've been a part of that race and we've won, it's, one of the best wins you can have for the year. But I think from a team's point of view, heading into the rest of the races this summer, like we're obviously really confident with everyone's form and how everyone's going. And especially on top of that is Bling he's going super well. He's flying, and he was definitely one of the strongest at nationals. And he only got off the plane on Wednesday or Thursday, I think, from Europe. And Sunday was a red hot day, 16 laps. Like it was, for him to do that, go that deep into the race is pretty impressive. So I think looking forward, we were like pretty happy with where everyone's at. But obviously, I feel for Bling because he's this type of rider that can really do well in that circuit. So we're disappointed, but move on a little bit.
Definitely, and you got ahead. Exactly. You got a full tour now to get some stage wins and kick the year off, I guess. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Hopefully.
All right. We'll move on from nationals. Again, I didn't want to dwell on negative, even though you'd rather win, but that's unbelievable insight, to be honest. It's just, it's so cool to hear exactly what's going through everyone's head in those key moments. It was an epic race. It was one of the best races for a while. And as people watching, we were just stoked with the depth. I think that's one of the coolest parts is, the guys at the end, the talent that you're all at. I think there was, I can't remember exactly, maybe 10 or 12 of you who've ridden a Grand Tour in the last year, which is just so cool at the top. And then multiple stage winners, obviously, in the race. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's to be honest, it's a pretty exciting period for Australian cycling. I think there is a lot of guys, and there's a lot of World Tour Australian riders now. And there's a lot of guys who are, at the top of the peloton. And it's pretty, it's, this year we only had our second ever Grand Tour. I mean, last year, second ever Grand Tour winner from Australia. And he's 26. So it's pretty exciting times, I think, for Australian cycling in general. And, obviously you got the domestic guys who race, locally and the NRS and that are classy as, and they put themselves in the mix every year at nationals. So it's pretty hard race for the first race of the year.
Definitely. Yeah, there was a lot of the more local guys, not on World Tour teams, absolutely taking it to the race, which was so good to see.
It is.
Yeah, we want to get into some rapid fire questions. We really love getting insight into what the pros are actually doing, just some behind the scenes around nutrition and training and some of the extras. So we're going to hit you with some rapid fire ones, and you just give us kind of your best answers for some of these questions. So we want to start on the nutrition front. This is something that a lot of people are interested in, especially with endurance sports. So tell us, what do you eat pre-training normally? And let's go for like a hard day. You got a hard session. What's your go-to pre-training meal?
Pre-training meal, I'll go to normally ranges. Depends where I am in the world and what season it is.
Yeah,
we'll go normally porridge, maybe a bit of muesli on top of the porridge, bit of peanut butter, a bit of honey, sort of some berries, and then an omelette on some bread. A couple of pieces of toast and an omelette. Yeah, we'll normally tick the box. That'd be for a pretty hard day.
Yeah,
and then a couple of coffees, of course, just to wake up.
For sure. And then post training, what are you having in that first half hour to hour straight after a hard session?
I guess we have you want to have quite high GI, so we get into some lollies, some Haribos, soft drink of some sort. And then obviously like a protein shake or protein bar, whatever's sort of on offer. This is at races. Normally at home, if you have the protein powder there and stuff, I try not to have too much of it when I'm at home. But I sort of will get into like some lollies and water and some yogurts. And then obviously you have your lunch meal, which is normally pasta, rice, or depends how big the day was, or just a sandwich or something.
Yeah. It's never that complicated, is it? We ask a lot of athletes this, but it's always pretty much the same answer.
Yeah. No, it's it's pretty basic eating when it comes down to it. I think you definitely try and, you're cautious of the fact that it's the same thing over and over again year round. So you sort of want to try and make sure you're mixing it up every now and then and, putting a bit of effort into, making some different stuff and whatnot. But at the end of the day, you can only eat so much. And if you got big day after big day, you sort of have to make sure you're filled up. So you don't want to waste too much room with stuff that's not going to give you the fuel you need.
Absolutely. And pre-race, it's the same sort of thing as pre-training, pretty similar meal?
Pretty similar, yeah, to be honest. You want to keep it somewhat similar, but it's obviously in very specific parts of the year. And, you have parts where you sort of just sometimes after races, the first thing you feel like is a salad. Because you haven't gone and eaten something that's quite light and refreshing for a while. So it's sort of you're not doing it day in, day out every day for the whole year. You sort of have, a couple of weeks where that's your nutrition and you sort of do that. And then you obviously have your periods where you're just, trying to get away from all the stuff you eat and all the time.
Yeah. So give us that answer then. What's your favorite kind of guilty food if you really want to indulge in something?
I've got a massive sweet tooth. So always some sort of chocolate or, pretty much chocolate and then, if you can get, to be honest, it's not a guilty food because actually I would eat it anyway if I was training, but I'd go out for a nice sushi meal.
Yeah.
Always. It's quality stuff that. So That's probably my go-to a little bit, but chocolate for sure. Yeah,
Sushi's probably
I can eat a block
for
of chocolate pretty quick. Yeah, sushi is. Sushi, that's what I mean. It's not guilty food at all.
Yeah.
It's not really an answer for that question because it's it actually is pretty good for you. In fact, it's probably better for you.
Yeah. To be honest, it's a funny question to ask athletes because most athletes train so much that there's no such thing as guilty food anyway, because you probably can't get enough calories in. It's about making sure you're getting more calories. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. Cycling is one of those sports where you can burn a lot. So you got a lot of fuel to put in.
For sure. Last one on the nutrition. What kind of diet changes, if any, have made the biggest impact on weight, if you're aiming for a waist weight, or performance?
I guess for me, I've been I've obviously coming up through under 23s and that, you've grown up eating spaghetti bolognese and, as carbs and that as much as possible before races. I think for me is one thing that's definitely changed a lot over the last 2 years is the fueling on the bike. How much you're getting in per hour carbs wise, how many gels you're having. Drinks have changed where you can get a lot more in from just one drink. And that for sure has made just actually when you calculate it and stuff and what you need and what you thought you were doing right is actually, not that a fair way off is what you're actually meant to be doing. And I think that's definitely been a massive change, not necessarily just for myself, but in the sport. People, fueling a lot more on the bike.
For you specifically, do you have a set, grams of carbs you're generally aiming for an hour per race?
Around 100. If it's a hard day, around 100, which is a lot. But then obviously, for a Grand Tour, you can't maintain that for 3 weeks. Well, I can't. Maybe some guys can. So I sort of, on easier days will, take that down a lot and sort of focus on more having real food rather than gels and bars when I don't have to. Because on the big days, you rely pretty heavy on the gels and bars of the world and the sort of drinks. Sort of just try and avoid them when you can for just more, diverse foods, diverse.
Yeah. And I guess it's more a case of the intense days. It's what's easier to get in, right? When it's too intense, you actually just can't eat that much solid food.
Yeah, exactly. And it's sort of Nationals is a sort of perfect example of that. It's raced from, sort of start to finish most of the time. And you sort of, big mountain days or whatever, and you don't really get much time to, actually take food on and sort of, eat a big rice cake or something like that. So you sort of, you rely really heavily on just drinks and gels and some bars, but even bars sometimes can be a bit difficult. So, and then if you add an element in where it's super cold or something like that, then you're trying to get in your pockets and you're wearing 3 different jackets and it's sort of, it makes things a lot easier when you got those things close by.
For sure. Leading into some training questions, the biggest message all pro athletes will say is consistency is key. But is there a specific type of training session or training mode that you think has made the biggest impact for you and your improvement?
I think for me, I respond quite well to a lot of, low intensity, but pretty big volume and stuff. And then I sort of the intensity seems to come a little bit quicker, which I think is for a lot of people. So I don't think that's any different. But I think for me, the biggest training difference has just been actually, living in a place like Andorra overseas, which with just living on mountains, you sort of get used to climbing longer distances and sort of whatnot. And you sort of, to get home's an hour climb. So you sort of, it's a hard way home. But but also in saying that, every time I go back to Ararat, it's pretty hard roads. So it's sort of, to be honest, that sort of location for me can change a lot. But training wise, I sort of, I do some low volume, low intensity, high volume weeks, especially early in the year. Obviously you don't do that much later in the year, but
yeah, for sure. Maybe that was a key to your junior success, the Ararat roads.
I think definitely. I think, every time I go back there for the summer and that, I'd sort of, it's funny. I'd just no wonder I used to go all right as a junior because they're tough roads. And slow. So definitely that's definitely helped.
For sure. All right. And do you do weights as part of your training program?
Yes, I do a lot of gym. Yeah.
Yep.
You can't tell, but no, I do. I do a lot of gym because especially over this period in the off season, just because, I find that helps a lot. Actually, to be honest, that should be my answer, is probably gym.
Cool.
Because I reckon that's something that really, really helps me. I don't know. I don't think it's the same for everyone, but I think just for me, I feel a lot better on the bike if I'm working quite hard. In the gym. That's not necessarily lifting weights or anything. It's more, just sort of the core and mobility stuff of the world.
For sure. Yep. Is that all year round, and maybe just taking some breaks when there's some key races, especially a Grand Tour? But
yeah, it's pretty hard to keep going year round.
Mm-hmm.
If I can get a good base in this time of year. So this time of year, it's like I do a lot just to try and create a good base. And I'd like to keep it year round, but it's not realistic with just the traveling and the racing. And then as soon as you start getting tired, a lot of the time it's hard to find time for it because, your key training days become key training days and of other days become easy. But I always try and keep it somewhat going throughout the year, but it definitely lessens off during the season.
For sure. Now, not everyone likes it, but do you like riding Zwift?
Good question. Yeah, I do. I don't do it much anymore, but if I was going to jump on the ergo, I'd probably jump on Zwift. Yeah. Yep. I like the competitive side of it. I like doing the races and whatnot. I'm just sure the same as everyone enjoyed it during lockdown. So
yeah, for sure.
I do. Not against it.
Yeah, cool. And power, not everyone likes looking at it heaps. Do you like riding to power and seeing it as you're going?
Training, yes. Yeah, I think I do like I'm pretty training definitely. Races, I don't use it very much at all. But I think obviously in certain situations in races you'd use it, but in races I don't. Like, I still use it, still have it there on the screen. Like, it's not like I have it off the screen. It's just milling me going too hard to focus on it and just focus on the wheel ahead of you. But I'm sure if you're off the front and ripping it up, then maybe you're watching it too much. But I'm not in that position too much, so I sort of don't get much time to look at it. Yeah,
fair. Yeah. And some extra questions just around, you as an athlete, as a professional. Is there anything weird that you do or that any of your teammates do that have no impact on performance, but you still do it anyway as part of your training or racing?
Yeah, I thought about this and I was trying to think of something. I don't really have anything that I can think of that I do. Not really. I'm trying to think of. I was trying to think of someone that I know that does something, but myself, I'm trying to think of like an old habit.
Anything mentally you do?
That I used to do,
like pre-race, like a ritual or superstition. If not, then that's fine. Everyone does.
Well, my mum sends me a message before the start of every race I do. I guess that's a tradition. Every race, no matter when it is, what it is, it's always around an hour or two before the race. So that's something that happens. That's been happening every day of race since I was under 23. So
that's amazing.
That is. Yeah. She's back in Oz most of the time. So she's up and shoots a message off. So she hasn't missed a beat yet.
That's a great answer. That's awesome. What's your favorite recovery strategy or gadget that you have?
This time of year, middle of summer, ice bars if I can. Always big fan of ice bars. Sort of, what else do I use? We have the recovery boots, which are pretty good.
Yep.
And then I'm trying to think. To be honest, just R&R is always a good recovery tool. Just not doing much.
Definitely. And I did say, these are some of the weird questions, but we're always just trying to find anything that a pro athlete's doing that's a little bit different.
Is different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think it's always important too to make sure that you're switching off a little bit, and that's always good for recovery.
Yeah, for sure. Is there, in racing, conserving energy as much as possible, being in the race, but doing it in a way that conserves energy as much as possible is basically the name of the game. So what tactics do you use to try and conserve in a race when it's just hell for leather at your level?
Staying in the wheels.
Yeah, for sure.
I think one thing that it really depends on what race it is and what you're doing. Like I'd use Nationals as an example. Tenfold is it's circuit racing and you know where things normally go, and you obviously got the climb and whatnot, and then you have those other moments you got to really try and utilize to recover.
Yeah.
Because if you start wasting energy on the parts of the circuit that aren't really useful to getting away or shutting stuff down, then you sort of wasting a lot of energy. So that's like circuit racing is great for that. You sort of can
pick your moments.
And then you try and, I think for myself, like you always want to try and steer clear of the front as much as possible, but that's not always a reality, and you obviously can steer too far away and sort of get caught out and get caught behind a split or something. So it's a fine balance of being close enough to the front but not too close.
Yeah, for sure. How would you apply that to a stage race or a road race? Again, in a tour example, it's a different stage every day. You're not going to know every single section down to the T. Are you relying on your directors to explain to you the sections where you need to be recovering? Is that part of your tactics, or you just feel it as you go?
Bit of both. Obviously you want to do a bit of research yourself, and sort of you got that, and then you obviously got the radios in your head that sort of can give you information and tell you what's coming up, what's not coming up, and that adds stress too, because everyone's probably hearing the same stuff most of the time. But it's also your responsibility as a rider, I guess, to do. We've got a lot of tools nowadays to do a lot of research on what the stages involve and what's coming up.
Yeah, for sure. All right, mate, last question. We do want to know, and you've been mixing it with some of these guys a lot as you've been getting better and better on the World Tour circuit, but the guys at the very top, the Van der Poels, the Vanguard, who obviously won the Tour, even Jai, who won Tour of Italy, the Giro. What makes the guys at the very top the peak of their game? Is there anything you notice when you're out there that you go, what makes them different?
No, I don't think so. Like, I think, there's obviously an element of there, like some of these guys are freaks, and they're they obviously work. It's a mixture of being freaks and working super hard, and it sort of all comes together, and they can do the things they do. I think, they just pretty committed to their sport, and they're pretty committed to being the best at it. I think I'd love to give you, a wise answer, but to be honest, I think they're just, pretty good at what they do, and they work hard at it.
That's a perfect answer. And that's honestly, we expect that most of the time. It's still good to hear that there's nothing crazy going on. It's just, they just work hard. And from your perspective, I want to make the point that you must be getting a lot of confidence that, you're really mixing it with them more and more frequently. And then when guys like Jai and Ben are doing so well at that level, and, Ben getting fourth at the Tour, you would see yourself as the same ability, and therefore, that must give you a lot of confidence in what you can achieve in the future, right? Yeah,
exactly. I think I'd love to perform at that level that those boys have, really sort of coming into their own now, and then, being there actually at the Giro this year when Jai won and stuff, it was pretty incredible to be a part of. Just to be there. Obviously, I've grown up with him, racing him since we were under 15.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, I'd like to think it gives me a bit of confidence that, I know that I can potentially, be up there with the top guys at some stage, but just keep chipping away at it, and we see how it goes.
And then lastly, what's your plans for this year, goals for this year? Have another crack at one of the main tours, or a couple potentially? I'll
playing it by ear a bit. I think obviously we've got some big goals this week. I know this is the media answer, but got some big goals this week. So start there, and then sort of look forward to, obviously I'd like to head back to races like Paris and that, and do well. And I think for us, we'd love to win a Grand Tour. So I think being a part of that would be great. I think hopefully we can start it off well with the next couple of weeks here in Oz.
Mate, great answers. We can't wait to see what happens over the next couple of weeks, and then keep seeing your progress over the year and all the Jayco boys. So thank you very much for joining us. You've been real generous in your insight into pro life, and thanks for that discussion at the start about the Nationals race. That's actually such good post-race analysis, and that's the type of stuff our audience loves. So thank you very much for coming on.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.